Okay, everybody, let's introduce the United Kingdom, our brethren from across the pond. The question regarding the United Kingdom is, can a government actually effectively govern, especially a democratic government, without a written constitution? Because in the United Kingdom, there is no written constitution that you point back to and say, that's our written set of laws. And the answer is yes, the United Kingdom can do that. And we're going to take a look and see how that is done. Demographically, the United Kingdom is a very homogenous, English speaking and primarily white um, population. The number of white uh, British has gone down about 5% in the last 10 years. And the percentage of Asian, Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi has gone up probably 3 to 5% in the last 10 years. So you're seeing that kind of, the country is becoming a little more diverse, but primarily it's pretty much a homogenous white country. That is the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. The mayor of London is often kind of like the beginning set point for becoming more politically aspirated. Often the mayor of London will eventually become the prime minister. So watch that guy right there. Um, the United Kingdom is also an old country. They have a very pretty high life expectancy, and this is primarily due to their safety nets. But of course, the older your population is, the more you have to pay people to live longer. And so healthcare is going to be more expensive. So you're going to start to see a strain on those safety nets because people live longer and they use more of those safety nets. So that's probably a significant problem in the United Kingdom is that the safety nets are being overused by a lot of elderly people. Religion in the UK, there is an official religion in the UK. It is Anglicanism. It is a Protestant Christian branch, but it's not really that influential. Like, you don't ask somebody who they are and they don't say, well, I'm a Christian. The difference is maybe immigrants from North Africa and the Irish do see Irish Catholics, but those Irish Catholics would be in Northern Ireland. But you only have about 60% of active church attendance, and the United States, it's like 5 times that, and even though it's dropping, so unlike here in the United States, where one political party will have pretty much a larger religious affiliation, it doesn't really happen that way in the UK, except again for Northern Ireland and the Catholic Irish. Um, One thing that you do see bigger in the UK is you see a larger actually mosque attendance by Muslims than you do church attendance. So religion, we're really not going to hit on except for Northern Ireland. The UK has one huge cleavage in that it is essentially four nations in one country. Most people call all of this England or Great Britain, and that's not quite correct. All of this is the United Kingdom. So the United Kingdom is comprised of four nations. They are England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. This right here, this is the Republic of Ireland. It is a separate country, but the northern part here, very contentious. We'll talk about as we go on, Northern Ireland. But all of this makes up the United Kingdom. So how do you get these four different nations that don't really think totally alike to get along in a government? Well, one, you have a different type of power distribution. Remember, for the United States, power is shared between a central government, the US government, and regional governments, the state governments. And a constitution exists that will tell you which powers each type of government has, either the regional governments or the US central government. Well, in the UK, you don't have that. You have what's called a unitary government, where the central authority has ultimate power, and the regional authorities are basically, they work whatever the central authority allows them to work. All right. So ultimately, in the United Kingdom government has the ultimate power. They are the ultimate authority. This doesn't mean that the regional governments don't have any power, but whatever power they have is given to them by the UK government. Unlike here in the United States, where the US government can't take away some of the state powers, and the Constitution, it explicitly says that. In the UK government, if it wanted to, could take all kinds of power away from other sub-regional or regional governments. All right. So the process at which you give these places power is called devolution. It's the transfer of political power from a central government to a sub-regional government. So, for instance, in the UK, the national government is in Westminster in London. It gives power to the Scottish Parliament. At any time, if it wanted to, the UK government could take that power away and just say, "Nah, you're going to follow what we tell you to do, and don't worry about it." Now, that could create consequences, but still, that is an actual thing that can happen. And then the government formats work like this. You have the UK Parliament, which is located in London. That's the national government. That's the government that actually runs the country. It gives power to the Northern Irish Assembly, otherwise known as Stormont, which is in Belfast. You have the Scottish Parliament, which is known as Holyrood. It is in Edinburgh, in Scotland. And you have the Welsh Parliament, the Senedd. And then finally, you have the Town of London, City of London Assembly. These are all governments that govern London, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, but they only have power because ultimately the UK Parliament allows them to have power. They are the ultimate authority when it comes down to it. Okay. Now, this we are talking about a democratic state here. It might sound like, oh wow, this is like a dictatorial thing. No, everybody is elected, and this democracy has come over the period of almost 1,000 years. So this is the concept of gradualism, where democracies have been consolidated over time, and it's and the democratic foundations are so entrenched within the country that you're not going to see probably a reversion back to authoritarianism. Democracy is so ingrained in what the UK is that the likelihood is super, super low that it would ever become authoritarian down the road. It starts with the Magna Carta. This is not a constitution. Understand that. What this is a complaint over taxation. Basically, there are 25 barons that did not like that they were being taxed really high by the king. And so they get together and create a council. And what they do is they say, okay, king, we're going to make a set of laws and you have to follow them along with us. And what we're going to do is we're going to take your land if we think you're taxing us unfairly, and we're not giving it back until we sit down and negotiate a treaty. It is the beginning of a parliament, a beginning of a legislative branch. And this is in 1215. Is it perfect? Of course not. Is it like the elites dictating what's happening? Of course it is. But it's the beginning of a democratic process. They're challenging the king, that they're going to have to, the king's going to have to be set to the same rules. And eventually, I mean, there's hundreds of years of battles between these barons and the king, and it results in something called the Glorious Revolution of 1688. Now, this is when William and Mary come across the English Channel. There's basically a bloodless rebellion against the king, and the king is given a choice: die or start to give some of your power to Parliament. And they choose Parliament. So this is the creation of the British Bill of Rights, where it eliminates the absolute monarch. Now, Parliament is actually going to have a great say in what happens. It creates the concept of a sovereign parliament. You're no longer an absolute monarchy. Now you're a constitutional monarchy where the monarch has to follow a set of laws that is created by Parliament, and any taxes, suspension of laws, or the creation of the army must actually go through Parliament. So, one thing about the American Revolution, you're not actually fighting the king as much as you're fighting the British Parliament during the American Revolution. And it is the beginning of a time known as parliamentary sovereignty. And in the UK, ultimately, who is the ultimate authority? It is the British Parliament. Parliament can make or overturn any laws. Parliament can create or nullify its own legislation, and Parliament is the ultimate supreme legislative, executive, and judicial authority. Now, yes, Parliament is the legislative branch of the British government, but Parliament makes all these decisions. And they are elected to power, so it is a democracy, all right? But parliamentary sovereignty is the ultimate authority and power. Parliament is located in Westminster Palace. Now, another example of gradualism is over time you see the right to vote granted to a greater percentage of the population, 5% before 1830, and of course now it's over 90% of people in the UK vote. And so we start to see types of legitimacy that are present here in most democratic states. Legitimacy is the people's belief that the government actually has the right to rule. And there are three types of legitimacy, and two are at play here in the UK. Number one, we have traditional. This is where legitimacy is based on the customs and habits over a period of time. And two, we have rational legal, where legitimacy is based on institutions that make and enforce the laws that exist within a state. In this case, the institutions deal with democratic norms and values. And finally, we have charismatic legitimacy. This is where you have a like looks, ideals, and charm of a leader is the primary legitimacy that goes in within a state. In the UK, these are examples of two types of legitimacy. One, a traditional legitimacy around the idea of democratic ideals. Going back to 1215, we have gradually became a greater democratic state. So, though those norms, like the government has the right to rule because over time they have created democratic norms of the people, and then rational legal. Now we have actual laws on the books. We have democratically elected institutions, we have voting polls, we have an independent court system. We have all these different things that go into making a successful democratic state, and it's written down in a series of democratically created laws. All right, so legitimacy in the UK based on a history of gradualism. Now, how that gradualism is maintained, we're going to look at next time.